Hi, I'm Peter from Coffee Parts, and today we're looking at which is the best Eureka home grinder for you. When you first look at the Eureka range, it can look confusing. There's 5 models, they vary in price, and what's the difference between them? But when you start looking into it, it is quite simple. You've got the Eureka Mignon Manual, the Eureka Mignon Silencio, the Eureka Mignon Specialita, the Eureka Mignon XL, and Eureka Mignon Single Dose. Now, the Manuale is a 50mm blade grinder, when the next two, the Silencio and Specialita, are 55mm. And when you look at these two, which are part of the Oro range, the XL and the Single Dose, they're 65mm blades. And now, as the blades go up in size, you do get more consistent in espresso grinding and a faster grind. What also changes as you go from one side of the spectrum to the other side, excluding the Single Dose, is your workflow. When the Manuale, you've got to hold your portafilter while you grind, and it's grinding while you're activating that switch. On the next three, being the Silencio, Specialita and XL, it's grinding based on time. And specifically on the Specialita and the XL, not only is it grinding based on time, but you've got a digital display to dial in that time. On the Silencio, you've got a little knob down here, which you can dial in, but it's not as accurate as, just say, hitting single, double, up and down by 1/10 of a second. Being able to grind on demand if you press those, or being able to lock the screen above there. The user interface on the Eurekas really is top of their game. One thing they do all have in common is the way you adjust your grind from fine to coarse using the worm drive knobs. As you turn them, they are stepless and you can really adjust to the nth degree. So you really can get that perfect grind, and all of these grinders will go from espresso all the way up to filter, AeroPress, mocha pot and cold brew. They all have, with the exception of the Single Dose, the same 300g hopper, which means you're probably going to use a 250g to load it up. In saying that, I like to load them up only up to the line here, so you've got enough coffee in there to push it down and stop the popcorning, and not too much coffee that's sitting there oxidizing. If you're going to store 250g of coffee in the hopper, you're better off storing it in a coffee storage container, which kind of stops the light and the oxygen going in. Looking back at these grinders, once again, I mentioned that on the Manuale, you have to hold the portafilter in, when on the next ones up, they do hold by themselves. So on these three, it's a hands-free operation. You put your portafilter in and it will grind based on time. Also, these three allow you to stop and collapse your grind halfway through. So you can grind halfway, give it a tap, let it settle and keep grinding. One thing to note is, once you get past the Manuale, the rest of the range have what Eureka call the silent technology. They've really gone in and put rubber on the motor mounts, rubber around the hopper, rubber everywhere to really bring it down to, on these grinders, 60 decibels, which is very low for a grinder grinding out. And on the XL here, they've even including rubber across the portafilter support to try and just get rid of almost all the sounds. Of course, there is noise, but it is noticeable how much quieter they get when you go from the Manuale to the Silencio, Specialita, XL and so forth. Now, right at the end here, the XL and the Single Dose are actually the same grinder, same motor, same blades. What changes is your workflow, where with the XL, you're grinding based on time. You generally have coffee in here and you're grinding either a single or a double based on time. With the Single Dose, you're grinding on demand, just whatever you put in. So you're putting in, to say, 20g of coffee in here, closing the chute, loading it in and grinding. And you're grinding, as you finish grinding, you're pressing the bellow to get any ground out, and there's no beans, nothing left in that grinder. Where that really helps out is if you're using multiple beans, blends, blend in a single origin, you want to go between coffee. When there's no coffee in there, you can really adjust it and even go from espresso to filter, whatever it might be, and all the coffee is fresh. When on these other grinders, there's always going to be an amount of coffee in there. It's called retention. And one way to compensate for that is to grind out a small amount, say call it a gram of coffee or 2, and chuck it out and then grind the second coffee. You'd be doing this when you're doing ad hoc coffee, say a coffee in the morning and at lunch, or coffee today and tomorrow. It's good to grind out just a gram or two in between. If you're doing consistent coffee, then you just grind out because that coffee will be fresh. There won't be really much time for it to be oxidizing between. Now, all grinders, except for single dose, will have a small element of retention. But effectively now, which grinder is for you? They do vary in price, and as the price goes up, so do the features. The bigger blades, they get quieter, they get faster, they get easier to use. Normally, if you're buying something like Gadget Classic, Rancheria Silvia, you're more than likely going to buy Manuale. It kind of fits along the price point, and having a grinder is 100 times better than using pre-ground coffee. So having a grinder changes everything. Once you go past there, or if you want a bit quieter, you might be moving up to a Silencio. But the most common one we sell probably is this one here, the Specialita. It's at that price point where you've really gone quieter and the workflow has really improved. And although there is improvements going up to the 65mm, bigger motors than that, it becomes somewhat diminishing returns. So someone call it, say, buy an Appartamento, an Isomac, ECM, Profitec, whatever it might be, at that kind of heat exchange vibrating pump level, will probably be buying a Specialita. Once you start looking at rotary pump machines, twin boiler machines really up there, you really are looking at these. At the end of the day, the better the grinder, the better the overall result. And the common thing to do is, if you're working within the budget, buy the best grinder you can, and then with the leftover, buy the coffee machine, because you're going to get better bang for buck overall. So that's a quick run on this lineup. All these grinders have the same footprint, bar the single dose. They're all small, they're all made in Italy, and Eureka has been around for over 100 years. So they really are awesome grinders, and we find Eureka now in the home market to be leading the way, when once upon a time it used to be Mazza. If you have any questions on these grinders, hit me up in the comments below. If you have one of these grinders, I'd love to know your thoughts. Are you happy with it? Which one did you choose? Let me know. Like always, if this video has brought you value, hit that thumbs up. Please subscribe, and see you on the next video.